true.
First rule of Fight Club is...
What do you think? I'll be back.
Say hello to my little friend!
It's a city under siege.
Some serious rock throwing.
Large groups of teens threw rocks at cops, injuring at least 7 officers.
This is the most active, the most violent group right now.
More than 100 teens, many of them apparently just dismissed from school at the end of the day, set upon this police car. Minutes later, a youth was tackled by police. A local CVS drugstore was looted. Police used tear gas trying to get things under control. The melee broke out a short time after the funeral for 25-year-old Freddie Gray, who suffered a fatal spinal injury while in police custody. The violence that broke out soon thereafter continued a weekend of violence that erupted around Camden Yards ballpark. Windows were smashed and baseball fans came under attack as a rain of bottles, rocks, and trash came flying at them.
People get kicked in the head out there.
Thousands of fans attending the Orioles-Boston Red Sox game were given a grim warning on the Jumbotron. A request from the mayor and police asking all fans to remain inside the ballpark until further notice. Baltimore's mayor, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, spoke out against the violence, but came under heat for this comment.
It's a very delicate balancing act because while we tried to make sure that they were protected from the cars and the other things that were going on, we also gave those who wished to destroy space to do that as well.
And now Baltimore is a city on edge.
There were these other major developments. The governor of Maryland has issued a state of emergency. 5,000 National Guard soldiers and police reinforcements have been ordered to the city to restore law and order. A curfew remains in effect. Everyone off the streets from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. All Baltimore schools are closed, but that decision is facing criticism from Reverend Jamal Bryant, who spoke at Monday's funeral service for Freddie Gray.
It was a horrible decision. It was young people, and I think that schools needed to be open. At least they could have been contained, and we could have gotten into the schools in order to address them.
Are you guys watching this picture?
Televised scenes of looting and violence are shocking the world. This car actually plows through flames, then goes crazily around in circles. It looks like a scene in a lawless war zone. This guy performs a sick dance in front of the flames.
Did you see that?
More insanity as a rioter brazenly slices a fire hose on live TV, keeping firefighters from extinguishing the flames that are ravaging the neighborhood.
This is a city that is out of control.
Another senseless fire burned down this senior center built by a local Baptist church that's been under construction for 8 years and cost $16 million.
He's a photographer! He's brass!
Photographers were attacked. Scenes of shocking violence were posted on social media. Rocks hurled at police cars. Windows smashed. Looters fleeing stores. But this mom is taking a brave stand. One woman fighting against the chaos swirling around her.
Get over here now! A store owner is dragged out of his store, then sucker punched and kicked during riots in the besieged city. As looters destroyed businesses large and small, some store owners say they called 911 50 times, but never got any help.
The police have retreated and let mayhem run wild on the streets.
This is the heartbreaking scene today inside the CVS store that was looted and burned as the whole nation watched live on TV. So many jobs gone. A small army of volunteers gathered today to clean up the mess.
Helping out. You're here just helping out?
Yes, I live directly across the street from here, so I came out to try to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem.
These citizens, many of them teenagers, took to the streets armed with garbage bags and and brooms to clean up their community ravaged by rioters.
We came to help the effort to clean up.
Look at that. They trashed it.
We were with a security guard who could only watch as these looters invaded a convenience store where he works.
I work in there every Saturday and Sunday doing security in that store. And watch them go in there and do that is just unbelievable.
These thieves are filling bags with stolen booty, pillaging their own neighborhood. Some hide their identity.
He's walking out with a whole bag of stuff. He's got a ski mask on.
But some were so brazen, they weren't afraid to be seen. Police walked a fine line, and we caught this moment of tactical retreat. Firefighters risked their lives trying to save this mom-and-pop grocery store.
It's an eerie and disturbing sight. A Major League Baseball game being played in an empty stadium because of the tense situation in Baltimore. This is how Camden Yards should look, filled with fans enjoying the ball game.
4 runs make it.
Instead, the game is unfolding in a ghost stadium.
Won't be a single one. That's the first time that's ever happened in the history of Major League Baseball.
Wednesday's bizarre game followed a night of turbulence in the embattled city. This was the scene minutes after the 10 p.m. curfew took effect. The city was on the razor's edge. Bottles were thrown. The police responded with smoke canisters.
Yeah, we want to get out of here.
Peacemakers worked the streets, appealing for people to abide by the curfew.
Please go home. Please be home by 10 o'clock. Don't give anybody an excuse to do something that's not right.
This mom carried a sign that says, "Go home, fight another day." Anger boiled over when Geraldo tried to interview State Senator Catherine Pugh.
I'm with the State Senate Majority Leader, Pugh. Come on, get out of the way, man. Get out of the way.
Don't touch me.
Well, you stop blocking my camera. Stop blocking my camera. Come on. Come on, stop it. Stop it. You're making a fool of yourself.
Reporters and photographers were ordered to leave the neighborhood, and as they did, they were spat upon. The drama unfolded just 40 miles from the White House on the night when the president and first lady hosted a state banquet for the Japanese prime minister.
Did you see that?
Meantime, there's growing outrage over the rioter who was seen slashing a fire hose being used to extinguish an inferno during the height of the disturbances on Monday.
Yeah, I just saw that guy cut the hose.
His image is being posted online in an effort to track him down. Here he is again, wearing the gas mask and red and gray hoodie, taunting police. And here he is, unmasked. Look, you can see that same distinctive hoodie. Despite the tension in the streets, authorities say the curfew was a success. Another hopeful sign the city is returning to normal. Classes were filled as schools reopened. Students gathered to discuss the disturbing events of recent days with their teachers.
How do we fix this?
Toya and Michael couldn't escape street violence on their visit to New York. This was the chaotic scene in Manhattan Wednesday night as protesters clashed with police.
If you unlawfully obstruct pedestrian traffic, you may be placed under arrest.
Cops came ready for action. Look at those plastic handcuffs on their hips. More than 120 protesters were arrested in all. Some were defiant, others distraught. Meanwhile, former Baltimore Ravens football star Ray Lewis is doing his part to calm tensions in the city, pleading with students at a high school to stay off the streets.
Because if you don't change, your situation can't change.
Hundreds of cops preparing for the worst in Baltimore, caught on video by a woman filming from her bedroom window. Listen to her dramatic narration.
They are in full riot gear. You understand? Baltimore, they not playing with us.
From her window perch, she captured the total madness on the streets during the height of the riots Monday as the honking of countless cars filled the night.
They stopping traffic.
Then this, 2 cars aflame in the middle of the street and a blazing trash fire. Catrice speaks as if she's broadcasting to the world.
I don't know what time it is, but this is live. We had to come out and pray.
Imagine Catrice's terror as rioters broke into the little convenience store on the ground floor and started looting.
This is the aftermath.
When daylight broke, she continued recording the devastation on the street. What she found was beyond belief.
Look at this. Tore the whole ATM out.
Police custody triggered the rioting. Investigators reveal that the police van carrying the 25-year-old suspect made an unexplained stop on its way to the police precinct. Was Freddie Gray subjected to a so-called rough ride in that police van? I wanted to find out what can happen in the back of a van when you're not belted in. My hands and legs are tied, but to protect myself from any potential injury, I'm wearing a helmet and pads. This is how prosecutors say Freddie Gray was in the back of the police van. He was not belted in, which is a direct violation of police policy. We began moving at slow speed. Freddie Gray was in that van for about 40 minutes. I've been in this van for maybe 15 minutes. I'm exhausted. I'm jolted, tossed around, and I feel totally helpless. I'm also scared. In Baltimore, it's known as a rough ride, but other cities use phrases like a nickel ride or a joy ride. We spoke to Chuck Drago, a 30-year police veteran.
A rough ride is when an officer is trying to pay back or cause some street justice to the person that he has arrested.
The van carrying Freddie Gray made 4 stops in 46 minutes before arriving at the police station, where he was carried out of the van, not breathing. Dr. Charles Goodwin is a spinal surgeon.
He is clearly injured in the cervical spine, and he needs an ambulance, not a police van.
There were wild celebrations on the streets of Baltimore following the announcement that 6 cops are being charged in connection with the death of Freddie Gray. People took to the streets to cheer the decision to prosecute the officers. And drivers blared their horns in approval.
Thank you, Lord.
The announcement by Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby is turning her into an instant national figure.
To the people of Baltimore and the demonstrators across America, I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man. Probable cause to file criminal charges.
Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby not mincing words, saying even before police officers placed Freddie Gray inside the police van, he never should have been arrested.
No crime had been committed by Mr. Gray.
Gray was found carrying a knife, but the prosecutor said it was legal.
Mr. Gray was then placed in a prone position with his arms handcuffed behind his back. It was at this time that Mr. Gray indicated that he could not breathe and requested an inhaler to no avail.
Mosby says not only did the officers fail to get Gray medical help, they made another grave mistake when they put him into this police van.
At no point was he secured by a seatbelt while in the wagon, contrary to a BPD general order.
The van drove away from the scene, and while the exact route is unknown, made its first stop here, where officers took Gray out of the van to put shackles on his legs and flex cuffs on his wrists.
Officer Miller, Officer Nero, and Lieutenant Rice then loaded Mr. Gray back into the wagon, placing him on his stomach, head first onto the floor of the wagon. Once again, Mr. Gray was not secured by a seatbelt in the wagon.
The officer driving the van made another stop here.
Despite stopping for the purpose of checking on Mr. Gray's condition, at no point did he seek nor did he render any medical assistance for Mr. Gray.
Several blocks later, the driver stopped for a third time, and 3 other officers arrived to check on Gray.
Mr. Gray at that time requested help and indicated that he could not breathe. Officer Porter asked Mr. Gray if he needed a medic, at which time Mr. Gray indicated at least twice that he was in need of a medic.
Mosby says the officers did not call a medic and once again failed to seatbelt Gray. The van's driver decided to move on. It was at the 4th stop here the van picked up this man, Dante Allen, who was put on the other side of a metal partition.
The only thing that I heard was little banging, like I thought he was banging someone was over there banging their head or something.
Mosby says Gray was once again neglected.
Sergeant Alicia White, Officer Porter, and Officer Goodson observed Mr. Gray unresponsive on the floor of the wagon.
But it wasn't until 25 minutes later when the van reached the police station that a medic was called. At that point, she says Gray was in cardiac arrest and not breathing. The medical examiner and prosecutor concluded Gray's death was a homicide.
Mr. Gray suffered a severe and critical neck injury as a result of being handcuffed, shackled by his feet, and unrestrained inside of the BPD wagon.
She's just 35 and took office only 4 months ago. She comes from a long line of police officers.
My father was an officer. My mother was an officer. Several of my aunts and uncles. My recently departed and beloved grandfather was one of the founding members of the first black police organization in Massachusetts.
Her husband, Nick, is a city councilman, and they have 2 daughters. The announcement led to scenes like this.
New York Times op-ed piece. It is a very powerful piece, and I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I'm from East Baltimore, and you know, the police officers have had a chokehold on our communities forever, and people are tired. Freddie Gray is one story that went viral and that has gained national attention, but there's so many of us who have been mistreated by police officers throughout the bulk of our lives. I listen to what they say, and we both evolve. You know, I learn as a person. I'm a lifelong student. So, you know, I don't mind a person telling me that something that I wrote or something that I did was wrong, because it'll give me an opportunity to make myself a better person.
Yeah, from the city leadership to everyone, to police. Why?
Because how can we get better? You know, if we sit around and we pat everyone on the back for doing the things that they're supposed to do, we'll never be the city that we could be. So, you know, I feel like challenging our public officials, our officers, and everyone else is the best way for all of us to move forward.
Yeah.
What I was saying is, when I say rise up, I'm not just talking about the negativity. I'm talking about the peaceful protest that happened here today. There was a diverse collection of people out here today marching for Freddie Gray, and nothing negative happened. There was white faces, there were black faces, there was Latino faces, Asian faces. It looked like a Gap ad, you know. So it was beautiful out here today. Yeah. And when I said watch the city burn down, when I wrote that, the city was actually on fire.
Right.
And that city was on fire because a large segment feels disenfranchised. They feel like, you know, Baltimore's not for them. Yeah. And they feel like our public officials and our police officers don't care about them because they can just come into our communities and break our necks and then, you know, go on with their lives.
And when you wrote it, it was on fire. Context is very important.
Yeah, when I wrote it, it was on fire.
I think your piece is very powerful, and I like your attitude, and I like that you challenge everyone. That's the only way that we should be. Thank you so much, C. Watkins. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to have you back here on CNN.
Yeah, let me know. Have a great one.
Yeah, thank you as well.
This weekend was relatively peaceful in Baltimore. But look at this shocking video as cops blast a protester with pepper spray on Saturday night, soaking him in the face and pulling him to the ground by his hair. The man wore a profane anti-police t-shirt and refused orders to get off the street. A startling new poll says a whopping 96% of Americans expect racially charged unrest this summer, similar to the violence in Baltimore. Last week, she was hailed a hero. Today, Baltimore's top prosecutor is being blasted by famed Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz for charging 6 cops in the death of Freddie Gray.
She had to come up quickly with an indictment, and it had to be a very harsh indictment, including murder of one of the defendants. And I think that was a rush to judgment.
HLN host Nancy Grace, herself a former prosecutor, sees it differently.
Rush to judgment? You know what? Tell that to Freddie Gray's family. Absolutely not.
Dershowitz questions the impartiality of prosecutor Marilyn Mosby after she said this.
I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man.
What concerned me most was her statement that she had heard the crowd shouting, "No justice, no peace." You can't let the crowd influence what an indictment in a case is going to be.
Alan Dershowitz loves to stir the pot. He's already said there shouldn't be charges, the case is weak, and And if there is a conviction, there'll be a reversal on appeal. Really? I don't think they've struck the jury yet.
There is general agreement among legal experts that convicting the cops will be challenging.
The fact that there is a murder charge might result in an acquittal on all the charges. That's what happened in the George Zimmerman case.
If you put in cops that are not responsible with the ones that are, a jury may cut them all loose.
Dershowitz says he's also upset that the prosecutor may have overreached by charging the cop who drove the van with second-degree murder.
Even if somebody is given a rough ride in order to shake them up, that's usually not enough for a murder prosecution.
Alan Dershowitz needs to go back to his ivory tower at Harvard and teach some law students, because in the real world, if this is true, this is exactly the correct charge.
Is a forensic pathologist. Dr. Weck, thank you very much. You have said that this is an open and shut case. Why do you believe that?
Well, let's look at it objectively. Let's set aside biases and prejudices and emotions and conjecture. You start off with someone who is pushed to the ground and placed in a prone position, and he then says he can't breathe. Briefly, they sit him up and then they put him back into a prone position, and an officer puts his knee into his back. This is called positional asphyxiation, compression asphyxiation, and it is something that is well known that is not to be done. Think of the Johnny Gamage case I had here in Pittsburgh and many others. Then we see him being placed into the van. He already is not capable of really walking as far as I can see. And he's placed in the van again in a prone position, and now his ankles are tied, and now his wrists are tied behind his back. This is essentially the much defamed, horrible hog-tie position which every metropolitan police agency in America, the International Association of Police Chiefs, the Royal Canadian Police Force, all condemned about 20 years ago. You don't do that. And then they move that van. He is crying for help. No medical attention is brought to him. He is an inert object. He is just moving around in any way that the van goes, whether that was deliberate, malevolent, intentional, negligent, or just in the normal course of driving. What difference does it make? You have that body back there moving in that fashion. I believe there's a strong likelihood that he had a vertebral fracture to begin with that was markedly aggravated and extended when his body moved around in that van. In order to get 3 vertebral fractures and near severance of the spinal cord, which is encompassed and protected by bone on all sides, you have to have significant force. So one way or another, that significant force was applied, and this man then died. They brought him back shortly, operated on him, but essentially he was dead because of the damage to the spinal cord, the nerves that go off to the lungs and the heart. So I don't understand what all of this difficulty in comprehending what transpired here, and the question about, gee, how can they prove when the injuries occurred? Well, you mean he was injured the day before playing touch football, and he was running around? In fact, he ran away from the policeman. He already had a broken bone, a broken spine. Don't you know that? Well, you know what? That doesn't happen, and even the greatest football player in the National Football League doesn't play with a fractured vertebral column and a severed spine. So what is the problem here? This was negligent treatment. This was unbelievable police behavior that is unacceptable and has been known to be unacceptable for decades in even a little East Podunkville and West Slobodkiville in America, let alone in a major city like Baltimore. And this should not be tolerated.
And there's no explanation for it at all. Dr. Cyril Wecht, we always appreciate your expertise here on CNN. Thank you very much.
The murder rate in Cleveland last year was higher than in Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles. 103 people were killed in Cleveland, 42 in this neighborhood. This day, the wind chill was 20 below zero. But Newton and Bayhoff kept the car window open so they can hear gunfire.
This is the most dangerous area?
One of. I can tell you that there are some individuals in the community who do scare me a great deal, given the types of things that they've done in the past, and you know, the arrests that we've made involving them. Yeah, I mean, they scare me.
If an officer comes out here and says he's not scared of anything, he's a liar.
How do you protect and serve people you're afraid of?
You know, if you look at things that have happened around the country, both to other people and the police officers, you know, some of that fear is warranted because there are people out there that mean harm to police officers.
You've heard about, you know, the talk that many African American families have with their young sons to watch out when they have an encounter with the police. Is that unnecessary?
Well, Bill, I don't want to minimize that because I know that happens a lot in minority communities. I can say from a personal standpoint, you know, I have a 24-year-old son, and I've never had that talk with him. You know, I expect him to be respectful and to act properly no matter who he's encountering, whether it's a police officer or a news anchor person. Is there something that happens in this country between African Americans or minorities and law enforcement? Yes, it does happen.
No incident in Cleveland has been more horrifying than the killing of Tamir Rice. Security camera video captured Rice playing with a pellet gun. The police pulled up, and within 2 seconds, an officer shot the boy. On the left, you see Tamir's 14-year-old sister being tackled by police as she rushed to her dying brother.
The police ride up, and almost even before the door is open, the 12-year-old boy is shot.
A 12-year-old boy lost his life, period. And what makes it even more difficult for me, not just as a person that lives in the city, but as a chief, is that happened at the hands of a police officer.
The rookie officer who killed Rice was hired by the Cleveland PD, even though another police department had found him emotionally unfit and forced him to resign.
How did he get hired by the Cleveland Police Department?
Those are things that are under investigation, that we're definitely taking a second, a third, and a fourth look at.
How did he slip through?
We know some of the things that happened in that process, and we're, even at this moment, changing the way some of that is done.
Prosecutors are investigating the Rice case. Protests against and in support of police have continued in Cleveland ever since the shooting. When we asked officers Newton and Bayhoff to meet with some of the people they serve at this community center.
What is the perception of the police?
In this neighborhood, it's not that good. Some people get that badge on their chest and they think they become Superman and they got a right to take on the world.
How do you differentiate these kids from the ones you call the bad guys?
One of the things is probably a smile and a wave and how you doing, officer? Instead of spitting.
Why do you think they would spit at you?
Not everyone likes the police.
It seems like every time a young black man is involved, they shoot first, ask questions later.
Me and my partner have arrested hundreds of gun arrests. Neither one of us have ever fired a gun at anybody.
Eric, you've been kind of quiet here. I'm not listening. What are you hearing? More communication. I've never encountered a situation that couldn't benefit from more communication.
100 police officers joined a high-speed chase and fired 137 times at this car, killing 2 unarmed people inside. Police mistook their car backfire for gunshots. The Justice Department report found a pattern of unnecessary and excessive use of deadly force, and it described an us-against-them mentality between the police and the community. What's more, some suspects were beaten, pepper-sprayed, and tasered even after they were already in custody.
The report found a pattern of excessive use of force. You disagree with that?
Yes, I do.
The report found that it was systemic within the division. You disagree with that?
Yes, I do.
What do you agree with?
I agree that there are some issues within the Cleveland Division of Police as they pertain to use of force, as they pertain to reporting and community issues. And we are working diligently, both with the Department of Justice and with the community, to make sure that we correct those things.
The Justice Department is insisting on reforms, including new rules on the use of deadly force and faster ways to discipline bad cops.
Unfortunately, it takes time. I for one, would love to be able to wave my magic wand and have this change tonight. Morning.
After spending 4 days with Chief Williams, you get the sense that he's disgusted, even furious, that the actions of some of his officers have so badly damaged the reputation of the department he's risked his own life for.
I've had people actually trying to take my life on 4 separate occasions, and I survived that. I can give you a whole list of officers attacked with deadly weapons that survive and don't end up using deadly force against that person.
What's at stake here?
Everything.
For Cleveland?
Everything. Everything's at stake. I mean, I talk to people every day that say, we support you and we know you have a difficult job to do with the Division of Police, but we know in the end, this police department will be better. And if that's not the case at the end of this, then I failed at my job, and I hate to fail.